There comes a quiet moment in every life when the noise fades just enough for a deeper question to rise, not shouted, not demanded, but gently whispered from somewhere beneath the surface of the mind. It is the moment when you ask, sometimes with hope and sometimes with exhaustion, why am I here? Why has this been so hard? Why, after all I've done, does the path still feel uncertain? And if you listen carefully, beyond the fear and the question, you may sense something else present with you in that moment, a stillness, a knowing, a presence that has never left you, even when you felt lost. That presence is not alarmed by your doubts. It is not threatened by your confusion. It does not recoil from your weariness. It waits patiently, lovingly, because it has always known something you are only now remembering. You did not come this far by accident, and you will not be abandoned at the threshold of your becoming. You see, the mind is trained to measure progress by external markers, timelines, achievements, recognition, visible outcomes. The ego loves checklists and milestones because they provide the illusion of control. But the soul does not operate on the clock of urgency or the calendar of fear. The soul moves in seasons, in rhythms, in cycles of expansion and contraction that cannot be rushed without breaking something sacred within you. When life slows you down, when doors close, when plans unravel, it is not punishment, it is recalibration. It is the deeper intelligence of life gently redirecting you toward alignment rather than accomplishment, toward truth rather than approval. There is a profound difference between delay and denial, and the ego confuses the two constantly. Delay feels like rejection when you believe your worth is tied to outcomes. But when you understand that your value is inherent, delay becomes preparation. A seed buried in the soil has not been forgotten. It has not failed. It has been placed exactly where it needs to be to grow roots strong enough to support what will eventually rise into the light. And you, in your moments of darkness, of uncertainty, of waiting, are doing the invisible work of becoming rooted in something far more enduring than temporary success. Fear enters when the mind imagines a future without support, without meaning, without guidance. Fear says, what if this is all there is? What if I missed my chance? What if I am not enough? But fear is not a prophet, it is a habit. It is a conditioned response born from identifying with the ego, which believes it must manage everything to survive. The ego does not trust life because it does not trust stillness. It fears surrender because surrender feels like disappearance. Yet the great paradox of spiritual awakening is this: when you let go of the need to control, you do not vanish, you expand. You do not lose yourself, you remember who you truly are. Trusting divine timing does not mean passively waiting or resigning yourself to fate. It means acting from a place of inner alignment rather than outer panic. It means moving when you are guided, resting when you are called to be still, and releasing the belief that constant struggle is proof of worthiness. You were never meant to earn love through exhaustion. You were never meant to justify your existence through suffering. Life is not testing you to see if you are good enough. It is shaping you so that you can recognize your own wholeness. Every challenge you have faced has been an invitation not to become harder, but to become deeper. Pain has a way of stripping away illusions, the illusion that happiness is somewhere else, that peace is conditional, that strength means never feeling afraid. In truth, strength is the willingness to stay present with fear without letting it dictate your choices. Courage is not the absence of doubt. It is the decision to listen to a wiser voice within you, even when doubt is loud. And that wiser voice has been with you through every setback, every loss, every unanswered prayer, quietly guiding you toward growth you could not yet see. When life feels uncertain, faith is often misunderstood as blind optimism or forced positivity, but real faith is far more grounded than that. Faith is not denying reality, it is trusting that reality is larger than your current perception of it. Faith is the calm assurance that even when you cannot trace the path, you are being carried by an intelligence that understands the terrain far better than your anxious thoughts ever could. It is the deep, steady knowing that what is meant for you cannot miss you, and what misses you was never aligned with your soul's truth. You may look back on moments you once labeled as failures and realize they were turning points, moments when life was quietly protecting you from becoming someone you were never meant to be. You may recognize that the endings you resisted were actually beginnings in disguise, clearing space for a more authentic expression of who you are. Nothing has been wasted. No experience has been random. Even your mistakes have been teachers, guiding you away from illusion and toward awareness. Awareness is the doorway to peace, not the awareness of what others expect from you or how you appear in the world, but the awareness of your inner landscape, the thoughts you choose to believe, the stories you tell yourself about who you are, the meanings you assign to events. When you observe your thoughts rather than becoming them, you begin to loosen the grip of fear. You start to see that you are not the anxious voice predicting disaster, not the self-critical commentary replaying the past, not the restless urge to prove yourself. You are the witness of all of it. You are the space in which these thoughts arise and dissolve. From that space, surrender becomes natural rather than forced. Surrender is not giving up on your dreams. It is releasing your attachment to how they must unfold. It is trusting that the same presence that guided you through confusion will guide you through clarity, that the same intelligence that sustained you in hardship will sustain you in abundance. When you surrender, you align yourself with a flow that does not require struggle to function. You move from pushing against life to moving with it. Spiritual growth is rarely glamorous. It often looks like patience when you want answers, compassion when you want justice, forgiveness when you want vindication. But each of these choices softens the ego's grip and opens the heart to greater freedom. Forgiveness, in particular, is not about excusing harm or denying pain. It is about refusing to carry the weight of resentment any longer. There are no justified resentments because resentment always costs the one who holds it far more than the one it is directed toward. When you release resentment, you reclaim your energy. You free yourself from the past and return to the present, where peace is always available. The present moment is not a stepping stone to something better. It is the only place where life is actually happening. When you anchor yourself here, rather than projecting into an imagined future or replaying an unchangeable past, you discover a quiet joy that does not depend on circumstances. You realize that peace is not found by fixing everything, but by accepting what is and responding from awareness rather than fear. In this acceptance, clarity emerges. Purpose reveals itself not as a grand mission to impress the world, but as a simple, profound commitment to live in alignment with truth, love, and presence. You are already enough, not because you have achieved everything you set out to do, but because your worth was never tied to achievement. You are enough because you exist, because you are an expression of the same creative intelligence that moves the stars and opens the flowers. Nothing needs to be added to you to make you complete. The journey is not about becoming worthy. It is about remembering that you always were. When you strengthen your faith, you are not convincing yourself that everything will turn out exactly as you hope. You are trusting that whatever unfolds will serve your growth, your awakening, your return to wholeness. You are choosing to believe that life is happening for you, not to you, even when that truth is difficult to see. And this choice changes everything. It changes how you meet challenges, how you interpret delays, how you relate to uncertainty. It shifts you from resistance to acceptance, from fear to curiosity, from despair to quiet confidence. There is strength still within you, not the brittle strength of constant effort, but the resilient strength of alignment. It is the strength that allows you to pause, to breathe, to listen. It is the strength that knows when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain silent. It is the strength that trusts the process even when the destination is unclear. And this strength grows every time you choose awareness over reaction, surrender over control, love over fear. God did not bring you this far to leave you. Not in the moments when you felt lost, not in the nights when you questioned everything, not now, standing at the edge of a new understanding. What has begun in you is still unfolding. What has been planted is still growing. The plan is not finished, and neither are you. There is a deeper peace waiting for you. Not somewhere in the future, but here, now, in the recognition that you are guided, supported, and profoundly loved. When you trust this, when you rest in this knowing, you stop asking whether you will make it, and you start living from the quiet certainty that you already are exactly where you need to be. And as you rest in that quiet certainty, something subtle begins to shift inside you. The urgency softens. The constant inner negotiation with life relaxes its grip. You no longer feel compelled to demand proof before trusting or clarity before moving forward. Instead, you sense an invitation to participate in life as it is unfolding, rather than attempting to manage it as if it were a problem to be solved. This is where grace enters, not dramatically, not loudly, but like a gentle easing of resistance that allows you to feel supported even when the road ahead is still veiled. You start to notice that guidance rarely arrives as a thunderclap of certainty. More often, it comes as a quiet inclination, a subtle nudge toward peace rather than pressure. The soul does not shout because it does not need to compete with fear. It waits patiently for you to become still enough to hear it. And when you do, you recognize its voice, not by how urgent it sounds, but by how calm it feels. It does not rush you. It reassures you. It does not threaten you with consequences. It invites you into alignment. Alignment is not about perfection. It is about honesty, the willingness to acknowledge what feels true in your body and heart, even when it contradicts expectations. When you honor that inner truth, even in small ways, life responds with an ease that cannot be forced. Doors open without struggle. Conversations soften. Opportunities emerge not because you chased them, but because you were ready to receive them. This readiness has nothing to do with being flawless and everything to do with being present. Presence transforms the way you experience difficulty. Challenges no longer appear as obstacles meant to defeat you, but as teachers revealing where you are, still holding on too tightly. Every moment of frustration points to an attachment asking to be released. Every moment of sorrow highlights a belief ready to be questioned. And every moment of uncertainty invites you to deepen your trust, not in outcomes, but in the intelligence that guides all outcomes. There is a sacred intelligence at work within you that knows how to heal, how to restore balance, how to bring you back into harmony with life. Your body demonstrates this wisdom every day, repairing itself without instruction, maintaining equilibrium without conscious effort. Your spirit carries the same wisdom. When you stop interfering with fear-based thinking, this intelligence moves effortlessly through you, aligning your thoughts, actions, and intentions with a greater good that includes but transcends personal desire. This is why surrender feels like relief rather than loss when it is genuine. You are not handing your life over to something foreign or indifferent. You are returning it to the deeper self that has always known how to live in harmony with the whole. In surrender, the constant internal dialogue of what if and what next quiets. And in that quiet, clarity arises naturally. You see what needs to be done not as a burden, but as a simple next step, free of drama and resistance. The past loosens its hold when you stop using it as evidence against yourself. Every memory, whether joyful or painful, becomes neutral information rather than a defining story. You realize that who you are now is not determined by what happened then, but by how aware you are in this moment. The present is infinitely more powerful than the past because it is alive, it is responsive, it is where choice resides. And every conscious choice you make here reshapes the future without force. As this understanding deepens, faith stops feeling like something you must maintain through effort. It becomes a natural byproduct of awareness. You trust not because everything is predictable, but because you recognize that unpredictability is not chaos, it is creativity. Life is constantly reorganizing itself in response to consciousness, and as your consciousness becomes more aligned with love, compassion, and truth, the patterns you encounter begin to reflect that alignment back to you. You begin to sense that your life has never been a solitary endeavor. Every encounter, every delay, every unexpected turn has been part of a larger choreography designed to awaken you to your interconnectedness. You are not walking alone, even when it feels that way. You are participating in a vast, intelligent unfolding where nothing is isolated and nothing is without meaning. This realization does not inflate the ego, it humbles it. It replaces the need to be special with the joy of belonging. Belonging is the quiet assurance that you are held within something vast and benevolent. It dissolves the fear of being left behind or forgotten. When you feel this belonging, comparison loses its power. You stop measuring your progress against others because you understand that every path is unique, every timing precise. What unfolds for someone else has no bearing on what is meant for you, and what is meant for you cannot be delayed by another's success. In this space of trust, gratitude arises effortlessly, not as a forced exercise, but as a natural response to seeing clearly. You become grateful not only for what pleases you, but for what has shaped you. Gratitude softens the heart and opens it further to guidance. It turns waiting into appreciation, effort into service, and uncertainty into curiosity. From gratitude, joy emerges, not the fleeting excitement of external validation, but the steady contentment of knowing you are aligned with life itself. And so you continue forward, not driven by fear of failure or the need to prove your worth, but guided by an inner compass that grows more reliable the more you listen to it. You move with life rather than against it. You trust the timing not because you understand it, but because you feel supported by it. And in that trust, you discover that the path has always been rising to meet you, carrying you gently, patiently, toward the fullness of who you are becoming. And with that realization, balance begins to reveal itself, not as a rigid state to be achieved, but as a living harmony you learn to feel rather than force. You begin to sense when you are leaning too far into effort and when you are slipping into avoidance. Balance whispers before it shouts. It shows itself as a subtle discomfort when you are out of alignment and as a deep ease when your inner world and outer actions begin to agree with one another. This balance is not moral or judgmental, it is informational. It is life gently informing you where you are standing in relation to truth. You start to understand that growth does not always mean expansion. Sometimes growth means integration. It means allowing what you have already learned to settle into your nervous system, your relationships, your daily choices. Wisdom is not proven by how much you know, but by how peacefully you live what you know. And peace is not the absence of movement, it is movement without inner conflict. When you act from this place, even difficult decisions carry a sense of rightness, as though they belong to you rather than being imposed upon you. There is a moment quiet, almost unremarkable, when you notice that you no longer need life to reassure you constantly. The questions that once demanded urgent answers soften into open curiosities. You trust yourself enough to live inside the question without panicking. This is a sign of maturity, not resignation. It means your faith has moved from the intellect into the body, where it can steady you without explanation. And because of this steadiness, you no longer confuse intensity with meaning. You stop believing that something must be dramatic to be important or painful to be transformative. Some of the most profound shifts happen gently, like a tide turning beneath the surface. You realize that healing often feels ordinary while it is happening, and only later do you recognize how much lighter you have become. This is where fear loses its authority. Not because it disappears, but because you no longer treat it as a decision maker. Fear becomes a signal rather than a command. You listen to it, acknowledge it, and then you choose again from awareness instead of reflex. Each time you do this, confidence grows quietly, without arrogance. It is the confidence of someone who knows they can meet whatever arises because they are no longer fighting themselves. You also begin to sense a deeper rhythm at play in your life, one that does not rush, but also does not stall. You see that what felt like stagnation was often incubation, and what felt like acceleration sometimes required restraint. Timing reveals itself as intelligent rather than random. And when you reflect on your journey, you can see how often you were protected by delays, redirected by disappointments, strengthened by uncertainty. This understanding restores reverence to your experience. You stop treating your life as a problem to fix and start honoring it as a process to be lived. Even the unresolved pieces take on a sacred quality. You no longer demand that everything makes sense before you allow yourself to feel grateful. Gratitude arises now from participation, from being awake to the privilege of experiencing this moment exactly as it is. And in this awareness, you feel something deeply reassuring. You are not late to your life. Nothing essential has been missed. The path has curved where it needed to curve. You have arrived at this moment with precisely the insight required to be here. The strength you were searching for in the future has been quietly forming within you all along. So you continue, not with blind hope, not with forced certainty, but with a grounded openness that allows life to meet you where you are. You trust the next step without needing to see the entire staircase. You honor the pauses as much as the progress. And you rest in the knowing that the same presence that carried you through confusion is guiding you now with equal care. This is the balance you were seeking: effort and ease, faith and action, surrender and responsibility, all moving together in quiet cooperation. And from this balance, a deeper peace emerges, one that does not depend on conditions, one that cannot be taken from you, because it comes from remembering the truth that has been with you every step of the way. And now, as the journey gently settles into itself, there is nothing left to chase and nothing left to resolve. What remains is a quiet recognition, like coming home after a long walk and realizing the house was never locked. You see that life has not been withholding answers from you, it has been inviting you into a deeper way of listening. The certainty you once sought in signs and outcomes has matured into a softer, steadier, knowing the kind that does not announce itself, but steadies you from within. You begin to feel gratitude not as a response to success, but as a state of being. Gratitude for the breath that arrives without effort. Gratitude for the heart that keeps beating faithfully, without asking for permission. Gratitude for the unseen hands that have guided you through moments you thought you would not survive. This gratitude does not cling to conditions. It flows freely, reminding you that life itself is the gift unfolding moment by moment through you. In this space, you no longer ask whether you are supported. You feel it. You sense it in the quiet strength that rises when you face uncertainty without collapsing. You sense it in the compassion that replaces judgment, in the patience that replaces urgency, in the peace that replaces the need to control. You recognize that the divine was never outside you, waiting to approve your progress. It has always been expressing itself as you through your courage, your tenderness, your willingness to keep going, even when the way was unclear. And so the story softens. The narrative of struggle loosens its grip. You stop defining yourself by what you have endured or what you still lack. You begin to live from a deeper identity, not as someone trying to get somewhere, but as someone learning to be fully present where they are. In this presence, you discover that peace is not a destination. It is a relationship with the moment you are in. Nothing needs to be added to make this moment complete. Nothing needs to be taken away to make you worthy of peace. You are already standing in the current of life, already carried by an intelligence that knows exactly where you are and why you are here. The next step will reveal itself when it is time, just as every step before it did. There is no rush. There is no abandonment. There is only unfolding. So let yourself rest in this truth. Let it settle into your bones, into your breath, into the quiet spaces between your thoughts. God did not bring you this far to leave you. This far is not the end. It is the remembering. The remembering that you are guided. The remembering that you are enough. The remembering that you are never alone in this journey. And as you move forward gently, consciously, awake, may you carry this knowing with you like a steady light. Not blinding, not demanding, just present. A light that reminds you in every season and every step that life is not happening against you. It is happening through you, and you are exactly where you are meant to be. There is a quiet wisdom that lives beneath all the noise of your thinking, beneath the urgency of your plans, beneath the restless habit of trying to control what has never truly been yours to manage. It speaks softly, patiently, without urgency or force. And it has been speaking to you your entire life. It says, in a voice that feels more like remembering than learning, that life is not asking you to wrestle it into submission. Life is asking you to trust it. Most of the suffering we experience does not come from what happens to us, but from the tension we create by resisting what is. Resistance is subtle. It disguises itself as responsibility, as vigilance, as being prepared. But beneath it lies a quiet fear, the belief that if you loosen your grip, everything will fall apart. And yet, the opposite has always been true. The tighter you cling, the more strained life becomes. The moment you soften, something extraordinary begins to happen. Imagine trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The harder you squeeze, the faster it escapes you. But when you open your hand, when you allow it to rest gently in your palm, it remains. Life responds the same way. It flows toward openness, not force. It aligns with surrender, not struggle. Letting go is not giving up. It is giving in to something wiser than the ego's need to dominate outcomes. It is recognizing that there is an intelligence moving through the universe that has been orchestrating galaxies, seasons, heartbeats, and breath long before you arrived with your to-do list and your worries. You did not create this intelligence, and you cannot improve upon it, but you can align with it. The ego resists this idea because it survives on control. The ego believes that your worth is measured by how much you manage, how much you predict, how much you defend yourself against uncertainty. It whispers that if you stop striving, you will be left behind. If you stop worrying, you will be unprepared. If you stop resisting, you will be vulnerable. But vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is openness, and openness is where miracles enter. A miracle is not a violation of natural law. It is a shift in perception. It is what happens when you stop insisting that life conform to your fears and allow yourself to see what has been available all along. When you release resistance, you are not abandoning discernment or wisdom. You are abandoning the illusion that you are separate from the flow of life. Notice how often your mind revisits the past, replaying moments that cannot be changed, rehearsing conversations that have already ended, carrying resentments like heavy stones in your pocket. The past survives only because you keep breathing life into it. And every time you do, you steal energy from the present moment, the only place where peace actually exists. The universe does not operate in yesterday, it operates in now. Healing happens now. Insight happens now. Love happens now. The moment you release your attachment to how things should have been, you reclaim the power to experience how things are. And how things are, when seen without resistance, is often far kinder than the stories you tell yourself. Forgiveness is one of the most profound forms of letting go, not because it excuses behavior, but because it releases you from being emotionally chained to it. There are no justified resentments if your goal is peace. Resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to feel the effects. When you forgive, you are not declaring that the past was acceptable. You are declaring that your future matters more than your pain. Surrender is often misunderstood as passivity. In truth, it is the most empowered state you can occupy. When you surrender, you stop arguing with reality. You stop demanding guarantees before you move forward. You trust that the same intelligence that brought you this far has not suddenly abandoned you. Think of a leaf floating down a river. It does not know every bend ahead, nor does it need to. It moves with the current, not against it. When obstacles appear, the water does not panic. It flows around them, reshapes itself, continues onward. You are made of that same intelligence. When you stop resisting, you become fluid again. Fear loses its grip when you realize that uncertainty is not the enemy, it is the doorway. Every transformation you have ever experienced began in uncertainty. You did not know how it would unfold, yet something within you moved anyway. That something was not fear, it was trust. Trust is not blind optimism. It is a deep inner knowing that you are supported by life itself. When you trust the flow of the universe, you are not saying that challenges will disappear. You are saying that you will meet them without the added burden of inner conflict. Healing begins within, always. Not when circumstances change, not when people apologize, not when life becomes predictable. Healing begins the moment you stop resisting the truth of who you are. A divine being having a human experience, temporarily forgetting your origin. You are not here to conquer life. You are here to express it. The mind wants answers. The soul wants alignment. When you align with love instead of fear, with acceptance instead of resistance, your outer world reorganizes itself in ways the rational mind could never predict. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is the natural consequence of harmony. Notice how peace feels when you stop trying to control the next moment. Notice the spaciousness that appears when you allow emotions to pass through you without labeling them as enemies. Emotions are weather patterns, not identities. You are the sky, not the storm. You are already enough, not because you have perfected yourself, but because you were never incomplete. The belief that you must become something else to deserve peace is one of the ego's most persistent illusions. Peace is not a reward for improvement. It is your natural state when you stop resisting yourself. When you release control, you make room for guidance. When you surrender fear, intuition speaks more clearly. When you trust the flow of the universe, life responds with opportunities, connections, and insights that feel almost effortless. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. Miracles often arrive quietly. They do not always announce themselves with fireworks. Sometimes they appear as a gentle shift in perspective, a softened heart, a sense of calm where anxiety once lived. Sometimes the greatest miracle is simply realizing that you no longer need to fight. Acceptance does not mean you approve of everything that happens. It means you stop arguing with the fact that it has happened. From that place of acceptance, wise action becomes possible. From resistance, only exhaustion follows. As you move through life, you will be tempted again and again to tighten your grip, to demand certainty, to resist change. When that happens, pause, breathe. Ask yourself whether your suffering is coming from the situation or from your insistence that it be different. This single question has the power to dissolve years of struggle. Letting go is not a one-time decision. It is a practice, a gentle, daily choice to trust life more than fear, to listen to the soul more than the ego, to flow rather than force. Each time you choose acceptance, you step closer to your true nature. And here is the quiet truth that changes everything. The universe is not testing you, it is responding to you. When you resist, it reflects resistance. When you trust, it reflects support. When you let go, it reveals its generosity. You were never meant to carry the weight of the world alone. You were meant to participate in a dance with life, guided by an intelligence far greater than the thinking mind. When you stop resisting and let go, you do not lose yourself. You finally come home. And in that home, miracles are not rare events. They are simply what happens when you allow life to move through you, unobstructed as it always has. And as you rest in this remembering, something subtle begins to rearrange itself inside you. The urgency softens. The inner voice that once demanded certainty grows quiet, not because it has been silenced, but because it has finally been heard. In that silence, you discover that peace is not something you manufacture through effort. It is something that rises naturally when you stop interfering with your own being. There is a sacred intelligence in pauses. The ego rushes because it believes time is scarce, but the soul knows that timing is precise. When you stop forcing the next step and allow yourself to be present with this one, clarity appears without struggle. Guidance does not shout. It arrives as a gentle nudge, a calm sense of direction, a feeling of resonance rather than pressure. You recognize it not by excitement, but by ease. You may notice how often your thoughts try to negotiate with life, offering conditions for your happiness. I will be peaceful when this changes. I will trust when I have proof. I will let go when I feel safe. But safety does not precede trust. Trust creates safety. The moment you decide to lean into life rather than brace against it, your nervous system responds, your breath deepens, and your body remembers that it belongs here. There is a deep healing that occurs when you stop trying to outrun discomfort and instead allow it to pass through you. Emotions are not obstacles on the path. They are messages asking for acknowledgement. When you meet them with compassion instead of resistance, they complete their purpose and dissolve. What remains is not emptiness, but spaciousness, the kind that allows insight to arrive unannounced. You are not here to perfect the human experience. You are here to experience it fully, without self-condemnation. The moments you judge yourself for struggling are the very moments that call for gentleness. Growth is not linear. Awakening is not a straight ascent. It is a spiral of remembering, forgetting, and remembering again, each time with a little more grace. When you stop insisting on being right, you gain access to being free. The need to be right is a subtle form of resistance, a way the ego protects its identity. But freedom does not require validation. It requires openness. In openness, you discover that you can hold opposing truths without fracture, that life is complex and still benevolent, that you do not need to reduce it to understand it. There is a profound shift that happens when you realize you do not have to chase meaning. Meaning emerges from presence. When you are fully here, washing a dish, listening to a friend, feeling your breath, life reveals itself as sacred without effort. Ordinary moments become luminous when they are met without agenda. You may have been taught to believe that strength looks like endurance without rest, like persistence without softness. Yet true strength is the courage to relax into what is real. It is the willingness to say, I do not know, and remain open. It is the humility to be guided rather than driven. As you release the habit of resistance, you begin to sense a quiet companionship with life. You feel less alone, not because circumstances have changed, but because separation has dissolved. You recognize that the same presence listening to these words is the presence that animates all things. This is not philosophy, it is experience, available whenever you stop arguing with the moment. Letting go does not remove you from the world. It allows you to engage with it more fully, without the armor of fear. You respond rather than react, you choose rather than defend. And in this state, your actions become aligned with love, not obligation. The miracles you seek are not waiting somewhere in the future. They are unfolding now, in the quiet spaces where you choose trust over tension, acceptance over resistance. Each time you soften, you signal to life that you are ready to receive. And life, ever responsive, meets you there. Stay here in this openness. Allow the flow to carry you without needing to know where it leads. You are not being taken away from yourself. You are being returned to what you have always been, whole, supported, and deeply at home in the unfolding mystery of existence. And in this returning, you may notice how the body begins to trust again. The shoulders drop, the jaw loosens, the breath no longer feels like something you must manage, but something that carries you. The body has always known when you are at war with the moment. It tightens in response to your resistance and softens when you allow life to be as it is. Listening to this wisdom is another form of surrender, a way of letting the mind step aside so a deeper intelligence can lead. There is a quiet courage in allowing yourself to feel joy without waiting for permission. The ego often delays happiness as if it must be earned through suffering or justified by achievement. But joy is not a distraction from growth, it is nourishment for it. When you permit yourself to experience lightness without explanation, you affirm your trust in life's benevolence. You declare that well-being does not need a defense. As resistance dissolves, gratitude arises naturally, not as a practice you force, but as a response to seeing clearly. Gratitude is what happens when you recognize how much effort you once spent pushing against what was already carrying you. You begin to notice the quiet supports, the timing that worked out without your planning, the help that arrived unannounced, the inner resilience that appeared when you thought you had none left. These were not accidents. They were always there, waiting for your attention. You may find that your relationships begin to change as well. When you stop resisting yourself, you stop demanding that others complete you, rescue you, or validate your worth. You meet them as they are, not as solutions to your unease. From this place, love becomes less of a transaction and more of a shared presence. You listen more deeply because you are no longer rehearsing your defense. There is a liberation in realizing that you do not need to solve your entire life today. The soul does not work on deadlines. It unfolds with a rhythm that cannot be rushed without distortion. When you align with this rhythm, patience ceases to feel like waiting and becomes a form of participation. You are moving, even when it looks like stillness. In moments of doubt, remember that uncertainty is not a flaw in the design. It is an invitation to trust something beyond your conditioning. The mind seeks closure because it fears the unknown, but the unknown is where creativity lives. When you stop resisting ambiguity, you open yourself to possibilities that certainty would have excluded. You may notice an impulse to return to old habits of control, especially when change feels imminent. Meet that impulse with kindness rather than judgment. Awareness itself is progress. Each time you notice resistance without feeding it, you weaken its hold. You are learning a new way of being, one that does not rely on tension for momentum. As you continue to let go, life feels less like a series of obstacles and more like a conversation. You listen, you respond, you adjust. You are no longer trying to dominate the dialogue. You are participating in it. And participation brings intimacy, a sense that you are not outside of life looking in, but within it, moving as it moves. This is the paradox the ego cannot grasp. When you stop trying to control the flow, you gain access to a deeper form of influence. Your presence becomes coherent. Your intentions align with something larger than personal gain. And from this alignment, your actions carry a quiet power, one that does not need force to be effective. Remain open to this unfolding. Let the next moment arrive without interrogation. You are not surrendering your intelligence, you are expanding it beyond fear. In this expanded awareness, you find that peace is not fragile. It is resilient, steady, and always available when you stop resisting the life that is already offering itself to you. And as this peace settles more deeply, you begin to sense a gentler relationship with effort itself. You still act, still choose, still create, but the strain has fallen away. Action no longer feels like pushing a heavy door uphill. It feels like responding to an inner invitation. You move because it feels true, not because you are afraid of what will happen if you do not. In this way, effort becomes elegant and discipline becomes devotion rather than punishment. There is a subtle dignity in living this way. You stop broadcasting urgency into every moment. You stop trying to prove that you matter by how busy you are or how much you carry. Your value no longer needs reinforcement. It is assumed quietly, the way the sun assumes its place in the sky without asking to be applauded. From this knowing, self-respect replaces self-criticism and compassion replaces comparison. You may notice that your thoughts begin to lose their sharp edges. They still appear, but they no longer command unquestioned authority. You see them as weather passing through awareness, not as orders you must obey. This distance is not indifference, it is wisdom. When you stop resisting thoughts, they lose their urgency. When you stop believing every story they tell, they soften and reorganize themselves around truth. In this space, intuition has room to breathe. It does not compete with logic, it complements it. It offers guidance that feels whole rather than fragmented, inclusive rather than fearful. You recognize intuition by how it feels in the body, steady, calm, unhurried. It does not rush you toward decisions. It invites you into alignment. There is also a deep humility that emerges when you stop resisting life's unfolding. You realize how little you needed to control for things to work out, how many times you were carried through moments you thought would break you. This humility does not diminish you. It enlarges you. It opens your heart to awe, to reverence, to the quiet miracle of simply being here. As you live from this openness, you begin to trust your capacity to meet whatever arises, not because you have rehearsed every scenario, but because you have experienced your own resilience. You know now that you can feel deeply without drowning, that you can face uncertainty without collapsing, that you can let go without disappearing. This confidence is not bravado. It is grounded, lived, earned through surrender. Life continues to present contrast, loss and gain, clarity and confusion, endings and beginnings. Letting go does not erase these rhythms. It allows you to move through them without clinging. You grieve without becoming grief. You celebrate without becoming dependent on celebration. You remain anchored in something that does not come and go. This anchoring is your spiritual identity, the part of you that witnesses experience without being consumed by it. It is not distant or aloof. It is intimately involved, yet free. When you live from this center, you no longer ask life to make you whole. You meet life as wholeness itself. And so the practice continues, moment by moment. You notice resistance as it arises, and you soften. You feel fear, and you breathe. You encounter uncertainty, and you trust. Each small act of letting go reinforces the truth that you are supported, guided, and held in ways the thinking mind cannot fully explain. Do not rush this unfolding. There is nowhere else you need to arrive. The miracle is not ahead of you, it is happening now, in your willingness to stay present, to remain open, to meet life without armor. In this meeting, something sacred reveals itself, not as a distant promise, but as a living experience of peace, moving quietly through you, steady and unafraid, reminding you again and again that when you stop resisting, life does not abandon you. It embraces you. And in this embrace, you discover that nothing essential has ever been missing. What you once searched for in effort, in approval, in outcomes, has always lived quietly within you, waiting for stillness to be noticed. The need to become dissolves, replaced by the grace of remembering. You are not arriving at truth. You are relaxing back into it. There is a softness that comes when you stop measuring your life against imagined standards. You begin to live by resonance rather than comparison. What feels aligned draws you forward. What feels heavy releases its hold. This discernment does not require analysis. It arises naturally when you are no longer resisting your own inner guidance. Life simplifies when you trust what feels true. You may sense now how gently existence supports you when you stop demanding guarantees. Each breath arrives without negotiation. Each heartbeat continues without your instruction. This quiet cooperation between you and life has never been broken. It was only obscured by the habit of control. When you let go of that habit, the partnership becomes visible again. There is a deep relief in no longer needing to be everywhere at once. Presence gathers your energy back from the past and the future and offers it to this moment. Here, you are enough. Here, nothing is lacking. Here, peace does not need to be chased because it is not running from you. As you rest in this awareness, compassion expands, not as an obligation, but as a natural response to recognizing yourself in others. You see that everyone is learning how to let go in their own way, at their own pace. Judgment softens because separation fades. Kindness becomes effortless when you remember that the same life moving through you moves through all things. The universe does not ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be present. It does not require that you understand everything. It invites you to trust what you cannot fully explain. In this trust, fear loosens its grip and curiosity takes its place. Life becomes an exploration rather than a battle. You no longer need to brace yourself against what might happen. You meet each moment with openness, knowing that whatever arrives will be met with the wisdom you already carry. This is not naivete. It is faith grounded in experience, the experience of having survived, learned, and grown each time you chose surrender over resistance. And so you continue, not with certainty, but with confidence in the flow itself. You allow life to move through you as it always has, unobstructed by fear, unburdened by control. In this allowing, miracles do not announce themselves. They simply occur quietly, naturally, as expressions of harmony restored. Stay here in this gentle knowing. Let the mind rest. Let the heart remain open. Let life reveal itself moment by moment without your interference. You are safe in the unfolding. You are guided in the uncertainty. You are held in something far greater than effort. And as you walk forward from this place, remember, peace was never something you had to earn. It emerges the moment you stop resisting who you are and allow yourself to be carried by the same loving intelligence that has always known the way.